salvadoreñas y pues es una canción que escogieron ellas. And so here we go. We have them on Zoom right now, which is wonderful, the age of technology, because for reals, I'm a little bit behind. So I don't know how that feels for you, Oti and Tati, to, you know, start maneuvering all these things. And how easy was it for you guys to do that?
So I think when we were choosing to trying to figure out with the whole podcast and what platform, we had experienced a couple of different platforms and the pros and the cons and so on. And well, did you hear about this one? How did you hear about that one? So it was really hard to kind of grasp to fit onto one platform. Mm-hmm. So we finally chose a platform, and so far it's so good. So far it's going really well. Uh-huh. I think our biggest challenge was editing.
Oh, try going on live.
Right? I know. Yeah. So when you told me we were going live, I was like, oh, what? Because at least with the podcast world, edit. You know, mm-hmm. I think there's a couple of times where we've recorded, like, I thought they don't forget to edit this part. To kind of give us some areas where, like, yeah, remove us, please. So that itself was really hard, and making sure la música that we want to play and so on, right? Because this is something like we want to make sure, okay, this is going to define us. Mm-hmm. This is what we're going to put out there. So we wanted to make sure that it fit our personalities. Our title, Salvi Mujeres Talk, and, you know, all of these different ideas and bringing it all together. I mean, we can talk about it all day long, but now it's like, okay, so we've talked about it. Now, how do we execute the process?
Right.
So executing the process was a little bit of a challenge for us, but made it happen.
Oh, wow.
And even then, I think, you know, I think I'm probably talking about her experience, but I think we both also agree that, you know, we're just going to rip the Band-Aid and just go, and we're going to learn as we go and do it. Because I think if the fear settles in, nunca lo vamos a hacer.
Nunca, ¿verdad? And I think that's important. What you just said is ripping off the Band-Aid, because if you don't do it, entonces, ¿para cuándo, right? And Tati, I mean, how is it for you?
Well, the same as Oti. We didn't know anything. So we're there doing our own research related to the podcast. But at the same time, we're learning about technology, right? Because, yes, we know that right now you can find a lot of things on internet. There's a lot of people also sharing their own experience doing a podcast. What is easy for you, what can work for you, what you can try to do so you accomplish and deliver the podcast. But I think, yes, thinking what Oti said about feeling that fear, no, the moment that you feel the fear, you are already creating this wall in front of you that is not going to let you go to the other side. And you want to be on the other side. So we have support each other, like giving ourselves ese apoyo, like, we got this. Even if it's not perfect, because we're not trying to be perfect. No. We're just trying to deliver something and maybe to inspire someone else to jump into something with a purpose that they maybe want to do, but they don't have the courage to do it. That's one thing. And the other, to have our own community, not only for Salvadorian people, but for other cultures to learn about us, but also to inspire women, because I think that's the main las bases of this podcast. Having these two cousins, we both women, you know, taking care of our families, working, and just doing what is best for us, and at the same time nurturing ourselves to become or to be a better person. So
right. So tell us, so what are some of the themes we're going to be hearing with the podcast? I mean, we don't want to reveal the whole thing, but what are some of the themes? I mean, kind of like a sneak preview of what we'll be listening to. Right. Because I'm definitely curious and I'm definitely going to be listening. So I just want to know, like, what will our viewers or our listeners, hear when they turn on Salvi Talk?
Okay, so we are going to start with what we're going to call a mini series, primaria.
Oh,
right. So
okay.
the thing is that we have talked about, like, well, before we can launch into the icons and the influencers and everything, I think we need to go back to the basics.
Right.
Right. So in El Salvador, and I'm sure in other Latin America countries, I think primaria means that in school, 1st to 5th grade.
Yeah, like grade school, right?
Right, grade school, exactly. So then we felt like, well, we need to go back to primaria, right?
I love it.
So our first couple of episodes that we're going to talk about is lo básico, the flag, what it represents.
Okay.
Right? The colors. In honesty, I'm going to be really honest. I'm putting myself out there again. But in honesty, when I looked at the flag, I don't think I've ever, like, los colores, right? Blue, white, visible, right? But everything that it represents, I don't think I ever really looked at it and didn't understand, right? Because that's something, I'm talking about here, when you're in school in first, second grade or anything, they teach you the flag, the United States flag, and so on. And so, of course, I know what it means and everything, but that's obvious because we went to school here.
Right, yeah.
But, flag, not at all. And the history behind it and why they chose the colors.
The symbols.
Exactly, the symbols and so on. So we are talking about the flag. We're going to talk about la flor, the national flower. Just all these basic little things that I think you need to understand and where this stems from and why. So we are, like I mentioned, we're going to grade school.
You're going to grade school, la primaria. Hey, and I mean, that's pretty important because we do need to know our basics. I mean, if I were to be asked why, in my culture, which is the Mexican culture, why do we have la bandera rojo, blanco y verde? I've heard so many stories. I don't know which is the real story behind it, but I'm getting what you guys are trying to prove and share. So, and then, is that what the first series is going to look like?
Yes. So the first series, so it's going to be a couple of that, and we're going to talk about the national tree, the national bird.
I didn't even know you guys had a national tree. There was a national tree.
We do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's our first our first basic series that we're going to talk about then. And then from there, we want to share with all, I think this has been something absolutely rewarding for us, is las mujeres. We're going back to the past. Todas las mujeres that from El Salvador that have represented El Salvador in one way or another. But I had no idea whatsoever. And I think both thought as we're kind of going through researching and stemming with all the different researches, we're finding, oh my God, did you know she was Salvadoreña? Oh my goodness, did you know blah, 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 Salvadoreña? And no idea. Because I have to be honest as myself, where I see una mujer Latina, sí. Unfortunately, automatically I say, oh, it's Mexicana.
Yeah.
Right? And not knowing that, no, she could be from, not just from El Salvador, from different places in Central America, in South America, and so on. But I want to we want to bring in this platform, las mujeres de El Salvador and their history and how their action has influenced what in the Salvadorian history as well.
Wow, that's important. That's beautiful because, we usually don't see other women being highlighted in the way that you guys are trying to highlight these women, and even more so from El Salvador. So without sharing names, but have you found these women, or is it a little bit difficult for you to find through your research?
There has been some parts where I think we did. It has been really hard. It's been really hard, but yes, yeah. I think I shared with you where a couple of days right after we came up with let's do it. It was a Mexican author that I follow on Instagram had reposted Purencia Ayala, who was the first. She was a woman that had went as a candidate for presidency in El Salvador, right? That right there I think Tati and I were both like, oh my God, this has to be a sign. How is it this was just like delivered to us in a way in this platform? And then we're like, yeah, so she's definitely going to be one of our first once we've done Ortho Primaria series that we're going to talk about her, and how, she was